and welcome. You're watching Medically Speaking, and I am Meenakshi Upreti. Now, it was World Diabetes Day yesterday, a very significant day, especially for anyone and everyone in India, because India has a whopping 77 million diabetics in the country. It's a disease which we can control. But as far as India is concerned, unfortunately, we are seeing a large number of diabetic patients who come and report every year. That number, of course, exacerbated by the COVID pandemic, which we just saw. We will be talking about diabetes, not just in adults or elderly, but also in children, because World Diabetes Day was on the 14th of November, which is also Children's Day. What really are the lifestyle modifications which perhaps you can follow to control your diabetes, why you should keep diabetes in check, what could be the risks of uncontrolled diabetes? To discuss all of this and a lot more, I have a panel of experts with me. Dr. Ganesh Javalkar is there on the broadcast with us. He's a principal consultant of pediatric endocrinology at the MATS department. And of course, we have the renowned Dr. Nikhil Tandon with us. He is the HOD of endocrinology department at the All India Institute of Medical Science. We'll also be joined by Dr. Surendra Kumar. He's a chairperson of the Department of Endocrinology at the Gangaram Hospital. He'll be joining us in a very short while. I'm going to start with you, Dr. Tandon, and my intention is not to scare our viewers, but why is it so significant, sir, that we talk about diabetes? What could really be the repercussions of uncontrolled diabetes? Why is it so important, pertinent that people pay due diligence importance to diabetes and keep it under control, sir?
So I'm going to split this into two parts. One, an answer from a health system or a population. And then, as you very rightly and pertinently asked, an answer with response to into an individual. If diseases, the severity and the gravity of a disease is based on, how much it contributes to overall mortality and how much it contributes to what are called disability adjusted life years, which means, what's the quality of life that you have even while you're surviving. If you did an assessment of all diseases, let's say in 1990, right, and said what was the rank order of the top 25 diseases which are responsible for mortality or poor disability adjusted life years, and then repeated the same analysis 25 years down the line in 2015, 16, diabetes is the second highest climber in that list. And the first highest climber was HIV/AIDS, and it's obvious because HIV/AIDS hardly existed in 1990. But diabetes existed then, diabetes continues to exist now, but it's climbed up massively in that list. So it's the single largest change in a disease contributing to mortality and disability adjusted life years. So from a health system perspective, it's important to be aware of that. It's just telling you that the numbers are increasing dramatically and the system has to cope with it. But in response to your specific question, I think the concern about diabetes is it's related to complications. The complications of diabetes could be those which involve smaller vessels, therefore it can be involving the eye, causing blindness, the kidney causing kidney failure, the nerves, which can actually then lead to insensitive feet and even loss of feet or amputation, larger vessels, which can cause heart attacks or strokes. Now, obviously, if you have a proportion of people with uncontrolled sugars, the likelihood of having these complications arise and becomes high. And we cannot reverse these complications when they happen. So if somebody develops vision-threatening eye disease, at that point in time, controlling diabetes can prevent further progression, but cannot reverse the loss of vision which has already happened. Yeah. It can prevent progression of further kidney disease, but it cannot reverse the kidney problem which has happened. So clearly, in a disease which may be otherwise asymptomatic, as is a lot of type 2 diabetes, you may end up in this very serious condition that you have complications, and then you're stuck with them because medical science today is not in a position to reverse these complications. So it's a very serious problem, and we need to be cognizant of this fact.
Well, absolutely. So, from organs like kidneys to even blindness can be caused if you do not control your diabetes. And perhaps that's why we're all having a very elaborate discussion on the management, especially, and that's what we're going to focus on the second part of the debate, management of diabetes, and perhaps also speaking about the lifestyle changes which people can follow. Dr. Ganesh Javalkar, sir, when we spoke of diabetes, and there's a lot of myths around diabetes. People think, oh, diabetes is something which affects, well, when you speak of type 1, that's different. But you speak of course, a non-inherited diabetes that happens due to a bad lifestyle, perhaps some, mix of your genetics and lifestyle. It happens at a later age, perhaps, when for an adult, maybe late 40s or elderly. But interestingly, rather unfortunately, I should say, we are seeing a large number of cases of diabetic children. First of all, take us through some data, and why are we seeing this, sir? How do we stem this, sir?
Thank you, Meenakshi. Yes, in the general public, there is very little awareness about children having diabetes.
Yeah.
Because most of the children, when they are diagnosed with diabetes, often the parents tell us that this is the first case in their family where they are coming across a child with diabetes. So it is important to be aware that not only that children can have diabetes, actually it is one of the common long-term condition that children have. Now, in terms of types of diabetes, majority of the children still, even in today's date, have what is typically known as type 1 diabetes, or which was previously known as insulin-dependent diabetes. So if we take a group of 100 children, almost throughout the country, across many centers, 90% of them would have a typical type 1 diabetes. You mentioned about inherited and lifestyle related diabetes. I would like to clarify here that the typical type 2 diabetes, that is typically referred as adult diabetes, is also being increasingly reported or increasingly seen in the past 1 or 2 decades in children. I would say that roughly the percentage of such a diabetes is about 6 to 8%. In some centers, it could be more. Some of the centers see more of type 2 diabetes.
Yeah.
But this is roughly a percentage that we see. And this is happening largely with respect to increase in the obesity amongst children and adolescents. Now, the inherited component is more stronger in this type of diabetes, actually. Because this often happens with a background of obesity and family history of diabetes. The type 1 or insulin-dependent diabetes mellitus, often in most families, there would not be a family history of type 1 diabetes. So the hereditary component is a smaller thing in that type of diabetes.
Yeah. So, you spoke of obesity, and I'd like to focus, and we also have Dr. Kumar, who's just joined us. Before I come to you, Dr. Kumar, just hold on a second, sir. Since you spoke of obesity in children, are you seeing a larger number of, in the last 1 year, furthermore increase in obesity, perhaps because of, the lockdown, schools not functioning? Has COVID at all led to an increase in number of perhaps diabetic children in India?
Now, certainly the pandemic has affected the lives of children in a very significant manner, because the adults, most of the working adults, started moving out of their houses at least after the first 5-6 months of the lockdown. But children even now continue to be confined to their houses. And not just COVID, but now even dengue and pollution and all sorts of reasons exist because of which the activities are really limited. Their screen time has significantly increased because of the lockdown and online classes.
And that
calorie intake or dietary intake has more or less remained same, or sometimes even has increased because of frequent snacking or munching. Stress has increased amongst children, which has also led to stress-related increase.
The sedentary lifestyle, sir, which we've seen in the COVID era, you say has led to an increase in the number of cases, and you yourself claim or say that you are seeing a larger number of diabetic children who are coming to you for treatment. All right, so I'll come back to you, sir. I'm interrupting you. Sorry, because I have a limit of about 20 minutes or so left in the program, and I want to include as many views and make this program as informative as possible. So hang on to your thought.
I'm not saying that we are seeing more diabetes. We are seeing more obesity.
Obesity. All right. Thanks for correcting me, sir. Dr. Kumar is just joining us. I'll come back to you, Dr. Tandon. So, sir, since we are speaking of diabetes in relation to COVID, help us understand the correlation between diabetes and COVID, because we had seen post the second wave, and there were multiple reports which had come in, which had spoken about the relation between diabetes and COVID. There were many who even claimed that diabetes related complications were seen in the post COVID era in patients who had recovered. How far is that true, sir? And what is the correlation, if yes?
So let me give you a bidirectional view, right? One is, and I'll quickly dispense with that part, which is if you had diabetes and if you ended up getting COVID, you ended up getting much more severe disease, more likely to end up in ICU, unfortunately, more likely to even succumb to the disease. So people with underlying diabetes had problems. So now let's come back to your primary question. So first we need to know the reality of all chronic silent non-communicable diseases in most parts of the low and middle income country stretches that 50% of people who have a disease don't know they have a disease, right? So if you start with 100 people whom you eventually diagnose with diabetes, 50 of them today will not know they have diabetes, right? Yeah. So when they come to the hospital with COVID and they get a test done for their management, that's when the diabetes gets found out. So it is a previously established but previously undiagnosed disease. That's point one. Okay. The second thing what happens is people who are predisposed to diabetes, who may not have diabetes otherwise, when they get an infection, any severe infection, and COVID was a severe infection, stress can cause an elevation in sugars. So that is unmasking of a predisposition. And hopefully once that stress disappears, they will revert back to their pre-morbid state. That is, they will have a tendency, but still not be frankly diabetic, right? But their numbers were consistent with the diagnosis of diabetes when they were evaluated because the stress had worsened it. The third thing which happened with COVID was steroids. Steroids worsen sugars, and then steroids again cause an unraveling or unmasking of diabetes. Again, hopefully, that exposure was limited. And again, over a period of time, that should reverse back. And the fourth category is again of interest for which data is as yet limited, but I'm sure with passage of time, and that's the question which you specifically asked, did COVID cause diabetes, right? Did it end up causing diabetes? Now, there are reasons why it could have done so. The virus, as you know, can affect the lungs because it has receptors available in the lung. Similarly, the virus has receptors which can infect the pancreas, where the location for the cells which make insulin are present. And so, yes, theoretically, COVID can result in destruction of those cells, decline in function of those cells, and therefore ending in diabetes. But really, long-term follow-up of these patients will give you the answer. A very pertinent question, but I think the jury will come out with this deliberation.
Fair enough, and till we can answer it with some certainty. But Dr. Javelkar, since we are focusing on children and diabetes as well, another type of diabetes we've seen is gestational diabetes. I know you're not an expert in the same. I should have focused more on just children and diabetes, but help us understand really what exactly is gestational diabetes, and can someone get it post childbirth also, sir? Because there's a lot of myths around the same as well.
This question is for Dr. Tandon, or
sir, for you. I know I did put a disclaimer out that I with you it should be more about pediatric diabetes, but I just wanted to focus on this as well.
So, although there are, I think, better experts on this panel to discuss this question, but gestational diabetes typically is a diabetes which is diagnosed often during the second trimester of pregnancy, and is considered as a harbinger of future type 2 diabetes mellitus. And the blood sugar levels of the mother obviously can have impact on the on the in utero programming of the child, and could have long-term consequences for the child also. On the other hand, diabetes which has been pre-existing, which is in the mother, can also have impact on the outcomes of pregnancy as well as on the child. What was your...
All right. No, I just basically wanted an overview for our viewers. And, before I go to Dr. Tandon, sir, because we're now going to focus on how we can manage diabetes. And I'll come to you on how to manage diabetes when we speak of children specifically. But Dr. Tandon, so, there are many reports which have come out in the past few years on the lifestyle modifications one can make to manage and control diabetes. There are cases which we all have heard of, how people have been able to completely keep the diabetes in control just by lifestyle modifications without medication. One, is that possible? If yes, what are the type of lifestyle modifications one can do to control their diabetes, sir?
So management of diabetes, you think of it like a chair. It has 4 legs, critical legs. 2 of those legs relate to lifestyle, diet and physical activity. The 3rd leg is, medication, whether it's oral or injectable. And the 4th leg is monitoring, which could be self-monitoring or lab-based monitoring, right? Obviously, we will not talk about the latter 2. Let's come back to the first 2. It's like when you start education, you don't go to standard 6 or standard 10. You will go to nursery and you'll go to preschool and you'll go to kindergarten. So that is the foundation of your education. Diet and lifestyle is the foundation of diabetes management, right? What are the important aspects of diet? And we don't go into specifics, but there are, again, 4 important things which I would like to communicate. The quantity of food that you eat, the quality of food that you eat, the timing of that intake, and the spacing of that intake. You eat too much, bad for you. You eat the wrong stuff, bad for you. You have, really large gaps between your meals, not a good idea at all. You cluster your meals together, again, not a good idea at all, right? So you need to look at that. Then you need to look at what is the type of carbohydrate that you're taking, the nature of the fiber that you're taking, the limited amount of fat that you're permitted to take. All of these things, but again, these 4 things are very, very important, because if you make errors in any of the 4, people say, Doc, I don't have potato, I don't have rice.
Yeah.
But that's not the be all and end all of diet management in diabetes, right? It's a much broader canvas which you have to see. In terms of physical activity, you can go into specifics, but really it has to be age appropriate in terms of the nature of physical activity. Dr. Dinesh will possibly tell you younger children, you can allow and encourage much longer durations, but even in adults and the elderly, 45 minutes, 30 minutes, depending on what is capable, do it. Predominantly aerobic, so when I say aerobic, I don't mean you have to buy, fancy shoes and take a gym membership. You can go and walk outside briskly if the pollution permits you. But really, you're looking at that. When it comes to reversal, and you talked about keeping diabetes under control, very much so you can do it in the early years of type 2 diabetes, not type 1 diabetes. In the early years of type 2 diabetes, you can manage with lifestyle alone.
But sir, I have a follow-up question before I go to Dr. Ganesh. And the question is that, can someone control the diabetes completely by lifestyle modifications? Can perhaps if I have diabetes, can I totally avoid medication? Is it possible to manage it without medication?
Yeah. For a fair period of time, you can. So let's look at a person who is significantly overweight, who eats the wrong stuff and is entirely sedentary, right? So in that human being, lifestyle, targeting weight reduction, the right sort of food, and encouraging physical activity can bring the sugars down to well within normal and leave them there for lengths of time. Now, whether if this happens at the age of 40 years, it'll do it for the next 40 years of their life, I don't know, and I perhaps don't think so. But several years you can manage with diet and lifestyle. And that's a message which, you and through the media should really encourage people to do. That's the cornerstone of management of type 2 diabetes.
Right. And also, I'll come back to another very pertinent point you've made about this sort of culture which we have right now of excessive gymming, intermittent fasting, the so-called healthy lifestyle, which is very focused on what we look like more than, managing, of course, having a very balanced diet. I'll come back to that point as well, sir. But Dr. Dinesh, we've spoken about lifestyle modifications which one can make perhaps when you have type 2 diabetes as an adult. But can you curb diabetes at a very young age? You spoke about juvenile diabetes, how there are many who are already predisposed because of genetics and, of course, sedentary lifestyle adding on to it. number of cases rising amongst children. What are the precautions for parents? What can someone do at a younger age, at an early stage, to perhaps, if possible, to curb diabetes at all, or if they already have, to control it, sir?
Yeah, so with respect to pediatric diabetes, the type 1 diabetes, unfortunately, as of today, there is no way by which type 1 diabetes can be prevented. So it is not, there's no causal link associated with any of the dietary factors or any of the exercise or lifestyle related factors. It is a random event which could happen to anyone, not just children, even adults can get type 1 diabetes. So it's an autoimmune disease, which means there's an autoimmune destruction of the beta cells of pancreas, which is yet unknown that what exactly triggers this kind of process. There are many possible candidates, including viruses and several other candidates, but the exact reason is yet not yet fully known. With respect to type 2 diabetes, I think in terms of prevention, the prevention amounts to basically control of obesity with respect to following a healthy diet and a healthy lifestyle routine, even for children. It's all right. Because obese child becomes obese adult. That's the dictum, basically.
So all right. So one needs to, of course, follow a healthy lifestyle, right? From their adolescent, right, from a very early age, so that they don't become predisposed to diabetes. Point taken, sir. But
right from birth. Yes. Not just adolescence, right from birth.
Right from birth. Yes. What can someone do right from birth, sir?
Yes. So, actually, even not right from birth, even before birth, taking care of nutrition of the mother, pregnant mother, ensures a healthy child delivered, because low birth weight children have more risk of metabolic complications. Feeding, exclusive breastfeeding in the first 6 months, correct introduction of solids at between 6 months to 2 years, introducing the food which is locally or culturally you use, rather than using all processed food and all sorts of things that are being given to children these days. So it starts.
So it starts early, perhaps. Very interestingly and importantly, you said right from your pregnancy, you maintain, of course, a healthy lifestyle. Pregnant women, of course, if they eat right, breastfeeding, of course, very important. I take all your points, sir. But Dr. Tandon, since you were speaking earlier about the right form of nutrition, and I don't want to go into exact details of a person's diet, but nowadays we are seeing a lot of trend of this gym culture, people trying to look their best, intermittent fasting, slimming pills, not eating, as you rightly said. Many say, I don't eat any carbs at all. Is that the right way to go? No carbs, zero carbs, intermittent fasting, you look great, but are those people equally healthy?
We go through cycles of diets, sometimes more fashionable than scientifically proven. You need carbohydrates, you need proteins, you actually even need fat, right? So these are the core proximate principles of diet. You need them. Now, how much you need depends on what you really end up doing. So somebody who is a manual laborer and needs ready energy at that point in time, somebody in the fields will possibly require high carbs because they need that burst of energy to take care of their physical activity. So I think we need to understand the context of the diet very importantly, number one. Number two, to say, no carbs on a meal and no something, I'm not sure if there's total scientific evidence to endorse that fully. The key issues will always remain, I could use a euphemism, that moderation rather than martyrdom is what should be our target. Extremes of anything eventually don't work out to be beneficial, because it's very difficult, to maintain and sustain extreme interventions. And you can have, only kheera tomato for 7 days in a week, but after the second week or third week, you'll just pack up in any case. Yeah. So look at what you're doing. We're not running a 100-meter race. We're running a marathon out here, pacing yourself out, being moderate, doing something which is sustainable, and absorbing the core principles of nutrition. Very, very important. Similarly, if you're happy going to a gym and doing something, great. I have nothing against that. But again, overdoing anything is not going to solve your problem. And for diabetes prevention and diabetes management, predominantly aerobic exercise, some degree of resistance exercise, but not exercise which makes you bulk up, because that becomes counterproductive over a period of time. Now, you're a professional athlete and you need to bulk up, so be it. I mean, that's a different story. But for the average Joe on the street,
Yeah.
you need to be sensible about these things.
And that's very, significant, sir, nowadays, considering we had spoken about health and these extreme forms which have emerged, of course, in the backdrop of some celebrities who passed away and got some cardiac arrest. But as we are, reaching the ending of the show, sir, I'd like to take a few closing comments from all of you. Dr. Ganesh, what would be your advice to parents, perhaps youngsters watching the show? What would you like to say to them on such significant day, sir?
Well, there are two things. One is two key messages. One is with respect to type 1 diabetes, something that I have not spoken till now, is that type 1 diabetes cannot be managed by diet or exercise or oral medicines alone. It has to be managed with multiple shots of insulin. There is no other way to manage type 1 diabetes. That is the first message. Secondly, with respect to diet and lifestyle, I think this starts right from the first few years of life, and having right habits in infancy and toddlerhood itself will ensure that the future of children is secure.
All right. So, right, you've emphasized that point, reiterated it through the program, right from an early stage, perhaps even from pregnancy, as you very importantly said, one needs to really be conscious living, lifestyle management that can help in management of diabetes. Dr. Tandon, as we started, we've come a full circle. When we started the show, we spoke about why it is extremely important to pay attention to diabetes, why you cannot let your diabetes go uncontrolled, even though sometimes, as you rightly said, many times it's undiagnosed. Now, I have two questions from you, just from the same. First, when you speak of diabetes management, now in the COVID era, we did see a lot of fear amongst people. They refrained from going to doctors. They refrained from, continuing medication. What will you tell those who've had some sort of gap, one, in getting diabetes diagnosed, if they did get diagnosed post-COVID, and secondly, those who delayed their treatment due to a fear psychosis? Now the cases are low. What would you like to tell those people, sir?
So quickly, two issues. One, that the government has proposed a universal screening for 5 diseases: diabetes, hypertension, and 3 common cancers after the age of 30 years. And I think that's a reasonably sensible thing to do. So in any case, there has to be a periodic screening. So even if you didn't get screened during the COVID era, it's not a bad idea to go through testing periodically so that you don't end up with large durations of undiagnosed and untreated disease. That's the first thing. The second thing is, fortunately, while there was some uncertainty about the legality of teleconsultations, there is a bit more clarity about that. And you can always pick up the phone and talk to people if you're already on treatment. I think following up with your regular doctor on the phone is helpful, so that there is hand holding, so that you don't feel, abandoned during such a period. And, patients felt abandoned. And I feel, feel equally guilty as a healthcare provider, that because we couldn't reach out to them at a time when often several of them felt they needed more support and guidance. But reaching out to your doctors telephonically or through other media, so that you don't have to take decisions on your own, right? Unsupported by fact. For type 1 diabetes, and I'm going to sort of encroach on Dr. Ganesh's turf slightly out here, diabetes education is a very, 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 and I can't say enough varies out here, important part of management. And the education makes you equipped to self-manage. You're taught how to monitor. You're taught how to change your doses. You're given a broad set of guidance about doing things. So diabetes education, which I think should come into that 4th leg of the stool I was talking about, monitoring plus diabetes education, become an important thing. We need to empower our patients. We need to make management patient-centric and patient-driven. And an educated patient, I'm not talking of, they have, MA, PhDs, but diabetes and health-educated patient is a much, much safer individual for himself or herself, because they'll be able to look after themselves better. So health education, specifically for diabetes education, critical part of this conversation.
Well, absolutely. And I think you have summed it up succinctly, sir. And that really was the intention of this public awareness program as well, to educate people. And I hope we have been able to impart some of the knowledge, of course, of what you have told us in the course of this last 25-30 minutes. And I hope this program has been as informating and riveting for our viewers as it has been for me. I hope we've been able to dispel some fears around diabetes and, of course, help you all with the modification lifestyle changes which you can make to control your diabetes. Do not let your diabetes go uncontrolled. Large number of diabetes. We've discussed data, the 77 million and more cases counting. Of course, as Dr. Ganesh also said, juvenile diabetes also on the rise. This is something which we can control. I hope you follow all the advice given by our experts. I hope Dr. Dr. Kumar could have joined. He's constantly, sending pointers which he would have liked to said, but I hope we've got it covered. And thank you both for joining us on this program. Thank you, sirs.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.